Let's dive right into this explainer. You know, when we look back at the earliest generations of Muslims, the Sahaba, it's super easy to paint them all with the exact same brush. But the reality on the ground was far more complex. Today, we're exploring how the early Islamic state was built on the shoulders of individuals with completely different life experiences. We're going to focus heavily on the incredible story of Ammar ibn Yasir, the twice-rewarded soul, and contrast his path with an actual self-made billionaire of the classical era.
So here's the core question I want you to ponder. Can a merchant who became one of the wealthiest men in human history, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, actually share the exact same spiritual rank as Ammar ibn Yasir, a man whose entire life was defined by extreme physical hardship, asceticism, and total vulnerability? How on earth do two completely opposite paths lead to the exact same destination? Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, early converts under fire. Second, two paths to devotion. Third, wealth and statecraft. Fourth, the prophecy of Ammar. Fifth, interpreting the Civil War. And finally, enduring legacies.
All right, let's jump straight into part 1, early converts under fire.
The social divide in early Makkah was just massive. On one hand, you have Abdurrahman ibn Auf. He's born into the elite Zora clan of the Quraysh. He's got wealth, status, and deep tribal networks. But then you have Ammar ibn Yasir. Born in the year of the elephant to a Yemeni immigrant father and a slave mother, his family were essentially foreigners. They had zero tribal protection. So when this humble family became one of the very first to embrace Islam, they were completely defenseless. They faced immediate, horrific persecution from the powerful Makhzum clan. The torture Ammar's family went through is honestly unimaginable. They were pinned under the scorching desert sun in heavy iron mailcoats, literally drowning in pitchers of water. But through all of that, Ammar's frail mother, Sumayyah, was absolutely unshakable. She looked right at the cruel leader, Abu Jahl, and defiantly told him, "You are smaller in my eyes than a beetle on the ground I would step on." That enraged him so much that he struck her down right there. Sumayyah became the very first martyr of Islam, and her husband Yasir followed soon after. Now put yourself in Ammar's shoes for a second. He just watched his parents get murdered. He's being tortured beyond human endurance, and just to survive, he's forced to verbally praise pagan gods. He was absolutely crushed, thinking he had completely lost his soul. But then, something miraculous happens. Divine revelation actually comes down just to comfort him. Quran chapter 16, verse 106 was revealed to confirm that because his heart was completely tranquil and firm in faith, the coerced words of his tongue didn't matter. He was forgiven. Moving right along to part 2, two paths to devotion. To escape that brutal persecution, both men eventually migrated to Medina, but this is where their paths really start to look different. Ammar became this ultimate symbol of tireless devotion. Picture this. They're building the very first mosque, Masjid Quba. Everyone else is carrying one brick at a time, not Ammar. He's hoisting 2 heavy bricks at once, singing as he works. When the Prophet asked him why he was pushing himself so incredibly hard, Ammar just smiled and said he wanted double the reward. The Prophet actually wiped the dust from Ammar's face and said he was filled with faith to his very merit. Meanwhile, Abdurrahman is building the economic backbone of this new community. He arrives in Medina with literally nothing. A wealthy local offers him half of his entire fortune, and Abdurrahman politely declines. He just says, "Show me the marketplace." He starts from absolute zero, trading butter and cheese on super thin margins. He reinvests every single penny, and eventually he scales this up into massive international caravans. He literally secured the food supply for the entire region. That brings us to part 3, wealth and statecraft. Let's talk numbers, because this is wild. Over $641 million US. That is the modern equivalent of Abdurrahman's estate. You might have seen some crazy internet rumors claiming he was worth $600 billion. Yeah, no. But based on classical invariance math of his 2.56 million gold dinars, this 641 million figure is completely accurate. He was absolutely a self-made mercantile titan. But here's the kicker. For him, wealth was never about hoarding. Strict Islamic jurisprudence and his own massive philanthropy meant his capital was constantly being redistributed. He essentially acted as the social welfare system of the early state. He funded military expeditions out of his own pocket, he freed slaves, and when he died, he left behind huge endowments for the Prophet's widows and the surviving veterans of Badr. His wealth was literally the community's ultimate safety net. And with great wealth comes massive political influence. During the Shura,
the council tasked with picking the third caliph, Abdurrahman actually took his own name out of the running so he could be a totally neutral arbitrator. He spent 3 grueling days consulting the public, offered the role to Ali, and ultimately appointed Uthman, who agreed to follow previous precedents unconditionally. It was a calculated move that kept the peace for a while, even if navigating those tense political waters cost him a lot of personal regret later on. Okay, let's head into part 4, the prophecy of Ammar. So while Abdurrahman funded the state, Ammar was the one physically defending it. He fought in every major campaign and even served as the governor of Kufa. But there was this haunting prophecy hanging over his entire life. The prophet had once said, "May Allah be merciful to Ammar. He will be killed by a rebellious, aggressive group." Fast forward decades later to the Battle of Siffin. Ammar is over 90 years old. Someone hands him a simple cup of milk, his final meal, exactly as foretold. And he knew. He entered that battlefield with a huge smile on his face, fighting for justice until his very last breath. This naturally leads us to part 5, interpreting the Civil War. The loss of Ammar was a massive shock to the entire community. Now, to remain completely impartial, classical Sunni theologians like Ibn Taymiyyah had to frame this tragedy very carefully. Based on Quran 49:9, both warring factions were still considered believers. So identifying the rebellious group that killed Ammar wasn't some declaration that they were non-believers. It just meant that side made a flawed, well-intentioned interpretive error. In this classical framework, a scholar who makes an honest mistake gets 1 spiritual reward, and the one who gets it right gets 2. So the theological consensus is that this tragic civil war doesn't give anyone the right to curse any of the Sahaba. And finally, part 6, enduring legacies. These 2 lives prove that total devotion can look entirely different depending on the person. Ammar ibn Yasir is remembered forever as a pillar of the Sahaba, a twice-rewarded soul buried right where he fell in Raqqa, Syria, who made the ultimate physical sacrifice. On the flip side, Abdurrahman ibn Auf proves that extreme wealth doesn't have to ruin your soul. His ethical business practices and statecraft literally kept the community alive during its most vulnerable early days. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. In our modern world, which test of faith and character do you think is actually harder? Is it enduring immense physical sacrifice and hardship, like Ammar? Or is it wielding massive wealth and political power without losing your soul, like Abdurrahman? It's a heavy question, right? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop digging into the history that built our world.